I know we're in a drought, but it's summertime. And in case you haven't noticed, the weather has been in the triple digits a lot. Which means that some of us might find ourselves getting rather stinky. Which means that some of us may desire to bathe more than once a day, even though there's a lack of water. Because we want to look nice and smell nice, especially for strangers. You ever notice that? I mean, I confess, if I'm at home and don't leave the house for a couple days, I can go a couple days. Those nearest and dearest to me, they're stuck with me. But if I need to go to the store, you can be darn tootin' sure that I am going to be washed and ready with my makeup on and my hair done. Because you know it always happens. When you just have to run that super fast errand after working in the yard all day and being grungy and grimy, that is when you are going to run into that long lost friend. You know, the one who always looks flawless, like they have it all together. And you find yourself feeling like you have to explain the entire reunion about your appearance. That I don't really look like this. Well, I think we all have some sense of vanity, whether we want to admit it or not. I know men even do care if their ties match their shirts. It's not just us women. And so we play our best cards, and we try to cover up our flaws. Sometimes we try to get the world to think that maybe we're better than we are, that we're all successful with a ton of money in the bank, when really we're up to our eyeballs in credit card debt. Or we're all lovey-dovey in public with our spouse, but behind closed doors we fight like cats and dogs. Or we plaster a smile on our face and talk about how we love our independence and not having to answer to anyone. But maybe deep down we're a little lonely. Or some of us, I think, find joy in self-righteously pointing out the skeletons in everyone else's closet, hoping it'll distract anyone from peeking and trying to learn about our secrets, our mess, our sin. If we really examine ourselves on the inside, some of us might be pretty amazed and wonder if we are even worthy to be here in this place today. It's not just that we're imposters, really. It's that when you think about all of our jealousy, all of our gossip, all of our judging, all of our short-temperedness, not to mention all of our isms, ageism, sexism, racism, we're all flawed. And we might wonder at how our ushers don't act like bouncers and keep 99% of us out of here. And that lightning didn't strike us here in the sanctuary, in the presence of God. Well, Mark's gospel today tells us a story about two who were considered unclean. A woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, and a 12-year-old girl. Now that is actually a lot of detail for Mark. Mark likes to make things short and to the point. So I think he really was making a point here with using the number 12, which is significant in representing the 12 tribes of Israel. I think he maybe wanted us to realize that these women were also representing all Jews everywhere. Well, these two who were considered unclean, it wasn't because they were any more dirty or grimy than anyone else living in that dusty part of the world. But according to Jewish laws, the Torah speaks about 3 types of uncleanliness in particular that can be contagious: leprosy, bodily discharge, and contact with the dead. And if you were any of those things, if you had any of those things, or if you touched anyone who did, you were considered unclean. And you would need to go through a purification ritual that could last weeks. And until you did, you would be excluded from society and considered unfit, unworthy to be in the presence of the holy God. You couldn't go to synagogue. You couldn't be here in worship. Well, this woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, she was tired. She was tired and desperate. She had spent all of her resources on doctors that had treated her like a guinea pig. And they had failed her over and over and over again. And she didn't want to bother Jesus. And also I think she was a little bit afraid that if she did get close enough to ask him, he might say no. And so when by chance the crowd shifted and he was right there and she was right here, she just reached out and touched his robe. After 12 years, she knew she wasn't contagious. What harm would it do? No one needed to know. It was her last hope. And it worked. Immediately, she felt herself stop bleeding. It was a miracle. Now, when Jesus figured out what had happened, he had every right and reason to feel angry and violated. Not only had someone touched him, not only had a woman touched him, but by her touching his robe even, she had technically, according to the law, made him unclean. He should have to go through a waiting period and ritualistic bathing and make atonement sacrifices, and frankly, it would be a big pain in the rear. But instead of being angry, when Jesus learned what had happened, he called her daughter. As in a father willing to do anything to bring healing to his daughter. And she was healed. And so, I guess if you think about it, instead of her making Jesus unclean, he made her clean. Speaking of fathers willing to do everything or anything to bring about healing for their daughters, we also meet Jairus in the story today. This synagogue leader whose friends are oh so sensitive. I'm being sarcastic. And as they run up, almost gleefully it seems, to say, hey, your daughter died, so leave the rabbi alone. I mean, really? They couldn't say, hey, why don't you sit down, we have some news? But still, Jesus went to the house. And he went to the room where the girl was. And he took her hand. He touched her dead body. Jesus took the initiative in what could make him unclean. And he said to her, get up. And she did. So I guess technically she wasn't a corpse anymore, so once again, it looks like instead of Jesus being made unclean, he made another clean and whole. Jesus isn't afraid of touching. He isn't afraid of cooties or uncleanliness. And he never leaves anyone unclean. Jesus isn't afraid of our dirt either. Not just our grime from the hot summer's day, but the grime underneath our skin. Our sin, our shame cannot scare him off. It may make us squirm a little to know this, but Jesus already knows our secrets, what we have done and what we have left undone. And he's not interested in leaving us in that condition either. In the sacraments, in the waters of baptism, in the bread and wine, Jesus claims us. We are washed. We are fed. We are made worthy. Jesus calls us daughter and son, and is willing to do whatever it takes to bring us healing. And he has. No matter our past, no matter our brokenness, it is time to get up. Through Jesus' love, we have all been made clean and have been brought into the presence of God, where we belong. Amen.